a very big one that is noticeable to all, where, hey, you can't really function cognitively, you can't really move around. So it's basically brain damage, what has happened. And then when you get to the other end of the spectrum where it's mild and that kind of piece, it's really affects executive functioning and decision making. So, whenever you have some problems going on and if it's PTS going on or you're using chemicals, self-medicating, you can see how that can go sideways, because we know all those things, don't allow you to make the best decisions anyway. And then when, your thinker's messed up, it just gets bad quick.
Is there, from all the work you've been doing and in your own personal injury, suffering, I don't even know how to categorize it. Do you understand what parts of the brain that it's affecting? I mean, we've talked a lot about chemical addiction and recovery myself, knowing, the effects on the hippocampus and all these important parts of our brain, that the stress the brain is under with the overloads of cortisol and everything that soldiers are enduring when they're in the field, constant fight or flight mode and everything else. So with TBI, is it showing that it's even harder to deal with those things? Like you said, normally a hat trick we want to celebrate, but this isn't one we want to celebrate, Tom.
No, it's it's not one to celebrate. Well earned, like any other hat trick, but it's a lot more different circumstances. But a big thing, like what you were saying with the traumatic brain injury, is the first part of it is getting the diagnosis, because they'll say, and it's very accurate, hey, you've got symptoms of post-traumatic stress or any just kind of stress going on. And then the symptoms of traumatic brain injury, there's a part where they overlap, where the symptoms are kind of the same, where it's a little bit of the chicken or the egg. Is like, we always know that high emotions, intrude on cognitive abilities, right? Like, don't make an emotional decision just on, everybody knows that. So, or is it like in my case, which was a big part of it, it was the lack of my cognitive ability that brought on all the emotion. An example for that would be, I would get lost driving home.
Yeah.
I mean? Like, hey, when I say lost, like I knew where I was. I was, driving in the lane, nothing dangerous, but I was like, man, I don't recognize this. And I'd driven the same route for 10 years. So it's not, so these different things would come up and it would be like, man, I know I'm supposed to know this, but I can't recall it, which would increase my anxiety level, obviously, because it's like, wow, man, this is a big deal. So, and then we know once your emotions start getting up there, that affects your cognitive ability. So it's just this little bit of a vicious cycle. So it comes back down to the, just like with anything, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, is that as best as you can, an accurate diagnosis of what's going on, and specifically with the TBI, they have a lot of very specific testing that can be done, to see what part of your brain's like. For me, in 2010, when I was worse off, 2010, 2011, I was operating at 50% brain capacity, like processing speed, and 50% of my verbal memory was all that I was getting. So you can just see where the frustration would come from that. So,
and just in sharing that, Tom, we had, near the beginning of Knockin Doorz Down, one of my friends who was in the Marine Corps, who suffers from PTSD, and he talked about driving home one night, and his wife was like, "Are you okay?" And he didn't realize he was driving down the middle of the two lanes, because that's what they had to do in Iraq to avoid the landmines and everything else. And, just how that part of the brain, that fight or flight, this is what my safety factor is, and using so much capacity of your brain just to stay alive and keep your fellow soldiers alive, that it's almost like the brain has gone there and it just is sitting there. Would you say that's kind of some of the things that was for you or other people that have come through the doors?
Absolutely. And it's a lot of it, some guys are on deployment for a year long, where so there's the normal human reaction of like, hey, I've been doing this for a long time, so I got to work myself when you're changing a habit, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so then the other piece of it is that I've personally experienced and found with all the guys and gals that we work with is that they call it post-traumatic stress, and okay, that's accurate, but also really it is, as it relates to any kind of trauma or stress that you've experienced, is have I processed it? Have I processed the emotional piece of it? Have I come to terms with it? Have I accepted it? Because some people don't, I mean, like you and I could be in the exact same event, and let's say in a wartime event, and this traumatic event happens, then we can you might be absolutely okay and like, wow, you just kind of process it. Next thing you know, it's something that jams me up, and I kind of need a professional, to kind of walk me through it. And a lot of that goes back to how we were raised, where we come from, core beliefs, all of that kind of stuff.